Hello, Hellerwork community. It's Anne-Marie Duchesne responding to Greer's call to answer a few questions for our next newsletter, and I decided to do this one via video. So with no further ado, Greer asks, what was your first dissection like? So I dissected for the first time in 2009 with Gil Hedley. And my first dissection was an incredible journey into discovering, unlayering, unfolding of the human body in a way that was respectful, loving, sacred. Gil really supports that environment in the laboratory. So that was my very first experience with dissection prior to getting to the body. We sit in circle. Gil has us check in with our bodies very much in the same way as we do in our Hellerwork circles when we are doing a training. And so that was my very first dissection experience, is to sit in community and commune essentially with a group of strangers, most of which I didn't know, before we even got to the actual process of approaching, first of all, the humidors. And the humidors are the casings that hold the forms together. And even then, Gil had us make a circle around the humidors, and we had a sacred ritual, a thank you, a prayer to the donors, first of all, for allowing us to do this research with and on their bodies. And also we thank their families. So that was the setting. That was the environment in which I started every dissection that I did with Gil. And she asks, how did that impact your viewing of the body? Well, at this juncture, when we came to opening the humidors and we actually saw the forms, there was a whole process of us walking around each form. If I remember correctly, my first dissection, I believe there were 4 different forms. And we went around and walked around each form, observing, looking, sensing, feeling what was happening to us as we were looking at these forms. And then Gil had us go through a series of different ways of seeing the body, much like we do also in the Hellerwork training, or I think in most structural integration trainings, where we stand and we learn to see and view the form in front of us. In this case, they were lifeless forms, and it was amazing to see still how much life there was in the body. Even laying on their backs, you could kind of sort of see the movement of their lives by the way they were showing up at the end of their lives in a non-breathing way. And so that was spectacular. And essentially, I spent the entire first dissection that I did on the feet. I didn't know that I was so into the feet, but I found out during this dissection that the feet were really the place that called me. I was fascinated with the intricacies, the layerings of tissue, the layerings, and really minute, tiny muscles, muscle attachments, continuations, the riverbed of our body, essentially. And so I spent my whole first week on the feet, and it was, to this day, and that's like more than 10 years later, to this day, I still look at the feet and work on the feet with the same type of reverence as I did in my first dissection. And so how it impacted my viewing of the human body was that I discovered that when I would wiggle the little toe, that the tissue in the sternum was alive, was moving, right? As we unlayered, that's how Gil does it. Essentially, we don't do any sectional dissection with Gil. They're not about the parts, they're about the unfolding, the unlayering of the human form, one layer at a time. And so when we got to the deeper layers of the body, you can actually see how wiggling one little toe actually affected the sternum, actually affected the tissue in the shoulders and in the throat. And that, of course, influenced my approach to body work, because I knew at every area on the person where I laid my hands that I knew for sure from having done the laboratory work that it was affecting the other pieces of the body. I think we know that as practitioners, and also because that's the type of work that we do. We understand that fascia is this beautiful webbing of energy, of source, of energy, of love, of movement, of lubrication throughout the entire body. And so we know that instinctively as practitioners, and to see it in dissection was truly revelatory for me. And it changed my practice right from the beginning. I was able to commune more with my clients, I feel. That type of education really helped me to see deeper, way beyond the skin. Her second question is, what role does anatomy play in your assessment, body work and movement, and how has that evolved? So precisely, as I said, really understanding and going beyond what I see in front of me, looking through the body when I'm doing assessments, really understanding, or beyond understanding, having the curiosity of wanting to go beyond what I'm seeing, moving or not moving, or any type of imbalance that shows up in the body. I want to know more about it. I want to go around it. I want to go in the back of it. I want to go above it. I want to go below it. So it really influences the way that I can see my client, my patient. And then, of course, that evolves into movement. And it's amazing what we can discover from just being able to see through the body in movement, because clearly we're three-dimensional beings. We have a lot of ways of moving, and we can really see where, if one area there's a place of stuckness or of inflexibility, how working on one part of the body will affect the flexibility in another part of the body. And that has evolved over my 15 years of practice, where I include so much movement in my sessions, because I feel that that's a more honest way of actually being able to interpret what's going on with the body, and not because we're doing huge movements. A lot of the time, the smallest movements really have the most impact. And finally, if there was one technique that I could share with the whole community, what would it be? Very simply, I remember doing the trainings now for, 6 years. One of the things that I'm a real stickler about is really what I learned from my teachers. And it's really to approach the body with kindness, with a tender, loving, dropping in, focusing approach. And I've really tried to impart that with the students that have been in trainings with me, when we approach a body, to simply be with it, to simply put our hands on the body, to gently melt, allow for the energies to commune between their living, breathing body and your hands. And just in that space, I have found for me that it helps me so much to identify where else I might go. And of course, we have a methodology. We have 11 sessions in the Hellerwork training and as practitioners. And yet, when we approach the body in this way, and we really take the time to drop in and to soften and to listen with our hands, with our hearts, with our bodies, there's a different sensitivity. There's a deeper layer of connection that occurs right at the beginning of the session. And for me, I have found that that has really helped to develop a lot of trust and love with my clients. So I hope that this is helpful. Thank you so much for having me, Greer. And thank you so much for listening if you've gotten to the end. Many blessings to everyone.